We're going to talk a little bit about the presidential debates and stuff like that. You know, the Republicans are starting to do their thing to get the candidacy to run against Biden come 2024. This is a little bit of a weird subject for me because, I mean, I'll talk politics all day. One thing that I am a strong believer in is that elections on the federal side of things, like the entire country.
Federal level, yeah.
Yeah, I think that the system chooses itself, and I don't think that there's anything that can stop that. With the 2020 elections, it kind of proved a lot with all the shit that happened with, Mexican beer at the same time. It just kind of proves to me that they want what they want and they get what they want, and there's just a lot more going on than the actual regular vote gets. But we're talking about the actual debates, and you had raised the question because I don't necessarily think anything that they say really means shit when it comes down to it. It all becomes just a smear campaign and a bunch of nonsense that's not going to get done. I know you have to win the House of Representatives and Senate and shit like that in order to really get anything done, but the president is our figurehead, so let's get into it a little bit, man. What take do you kind of have on the presidential debates? Because I know you and Stolze were like actually watching them, and
I mean, I watched a little bit of it. I mean, the real reason why is because I just wanted to see how the people handled the candidates up at the podiums handled themselves, carried themselves, because the majority of the time it's someone saying, oh well, the current administration is doing this. It's a smear campaign, like you said. And then after that, it's like, okay, well, they ask the questions, moderators ask the questions. What will you do since this, what would you do to do this? And then they don't even answer the question.
Yeah, no.
Or if they do, it's in such a generalized, they use generalized terminology in order to just say, oh, we're going to cut taxes for the middle class. And people are just like starting to clap. It's like, okay, well, how? Like, give details so people can make an educated decision on what they feel the policy is that you're going to put in place and how it's going to be put in place.
Well, I think they bank a lot on people not really understanding what it is that they're talking about there.
Okay, so then how do you vote on not knowing what it is that you're voting for?
Well, that's the problem with having an election where everyone can vote and every vote matters. Because I know a couple people that I don't fucking really care for their opinion enough to think that they deserve a vote, but at the end of the day, they're part of this country.
How are you going to eliminate those from being able to vote who maybe don't know what it is that they're voting for?
You can't.
You can't. Correct.
Not
so
in our
then the candidates need to be more informative in giving more information as to how they would do things that they say that they're going to do instead of just saying that.
I agree with you, but at the same time, I think
because
a lot of it comes down.
It's not worth watching.
A lot of it comes down to just a popularity contest, because no matter what they go up there, someone like Donald Trump is a very good example of this. No matter what he goes up there and says, his fans are going to back what he says. They don't have any logic behind it. Some of them do. But they hear what he says and they're like, oh, he's right for this country, so whatever he's doing
do that
is
with
right.
everyone. Yes,
they do, but
everyone.
Donald Trump is a more extreme example of that, because that man has a fandom behind him.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But he's also built that, I think a lot of that on, he did say that he was going to do a lot of things, and then within the first, so many days of him being president, he did what he, a lot of what, if not most, everything of what he said he was going to do.
Sure.
So if you back what it is that you say, the thing is, it's like, I think the debates, here's the thing. The majority of the people don't do their own due diligence or homework to watch videos of candidates outside of what they see on the debate.
That's kind of where I'm coming from. In
so
order
it's
to
not
have
just
a
the
real election, we need the people to do their homework.
But that we can't force someone to do their homework,
No,
and you're not going to give people a test to make sure that they're knowledgeable to vote. That's impossible.
So then there's a lot of people who don't know what is being set up there, and that's exactly why I think it just ends up choosing itself at that point in time.
Yeah, potentially, but like a lot of that, I think it's not just the candidates or these debates or whatever. It's not just the fault of like how they have this set up or whatever. It's also the individual's fault for not doing their due diligence to make sure what it is that they're voting for is something that they understand or even want to, see put in place. Because most of these people is like, oh, I'm voting for so and so, and it's like, okay, what's the reasoning for that? I don't know. I just like them.
Yeah. No.
Oh, that's not a reason to vote for someone.
No, it's not, but that's how much of it does. So I think at that point in time, it's kind of on the candidate that is running for elections to make the people, or at least give a little bit of a push for the people to do more of their homework. Actually get up there and say,
sure.
hey, you guys need to understand what I'm saying, not just I'm going to say this and my fans are going to back me because they like me.
They need to give, they need to divulge more information and be more educational as to how they would do things. At the same time, the people in the United States, the United States the American people need to do their homework.
Yeah, but they're not.
They're not, and you can't force either of those things either.
No.
You
But
can't.
that's where I'm coming from. The candidate needs to have more of a push to do that, but I don't think they want to do that because they want the people want the people to be stupid because
people might find a fault of something that they don't want, and then they might not vote for that person.
And I think that if the people were educated and did listen to it and did know what they were doing, they would realize that these candidates are in it for themselves. They're in it to get money to help push their own agenda, and the agendas that they push during the debates and stuff like that aren't necessarily what they want to push. They're hitting key things that they know the American people care about, so they can get the vote.
And their campaign managers,
so they can get the money.
And the individuals that basically coach them on what to say and how to say it and how to present things, and that's where they get a lot of those key talking points from. Those little slogans and things that they say at these debates is, typically not coming from them in their own mind of something they typically thought of themselves. I'm not saying everything, but a lot of it is, their campaign managers and people on their staff doing their homework behind the scenes of the other candidates and the information that they feel, well, this person, if they mention this is what you got to say to combat that.
And a lot of them are just reading off a teleprompter, and that's where you were talking about before, like they ask a question and it just kind of gets diverted into something else. Is because they already have something planned that they're going to say.
It's a teleprompter in their mind, not in front of them.
Actual teleprompter.
They have teleprompters on?
Yeah, that's why people sometimes they ask it. They already know what is going to be asked, or like a broad understanding of what's going to be asked.
So hold on, they have a teleprompter of what to say? The candidates at the debates?
I'm pretty sure, yes.
There's no way.
I think so. That's why every time something gets done, they don't actually answer the question. They have their pre-written things that they know.
They might have some pre-written
They know abroad, these are the key points that people want to know about, so they're going to ask questions, and it doesn't necessarily match the question. The response doesn't match the question that was asked because they already have something laid out that they want to be said.
So here's my thing too, is I don't think they should have the questions or the information of what's going to be asked before they get to that debate.
Well, I don't know if they necessarily do, but they have an understanding of what's going to be asked because that's the environment that we're living in.
Well, if that's the case, then a teleprompter wouldn't help them.
No, it wouldn't, and that's the point that I'm trying to make. That's why these debates don't really make sense to me, because nothing actually gets answered. The questions that they ask, they just go to what they already have written down that they're going to talk about, and it just means nothing. That's what I'm saying.
They shouldn't. Okay, you mean the candidates have what they want written down that they want to talk about? Okay, yeah, that's true. Some of that is true. Probably
that, or if they get stumped on one, they just talk shit about the person.
They veer off topic a lot and try and make it sound somewhat understanding when they're not even answering the question or even talking about the topic that was discussed.
There's things to debate too at that level with politicians are trained to talk slow so they can get their thoughts and
articulate their thoughts.
Exactly.
Put them into words.
Yeah. And also when you're talking about, you're having a debate and they have a minute and a half to get their points across or whatever. The slower you talk, the less you have to talk about, and you can get through that point a little bit.
I mean, my big thing, and I don't want to harp too much on the debates or whatnot, because, whatever, but a few things. One, I think the big winner of that night was Trump. He won that night not even being there, because there were more people that watched on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it is. Him and Tucker had the interview. More people watched that than they did the debates, first and foremost. Secondly, a lot of the debate, there's some debate questions and a lot of discussion about Trump, so he was still brought up and talked about while he wasn't even there.
He just got indicted too, so
he didn't have to go there and actually make himself look a certain way or get even involved in that to be the topic of discussion of debate, basically, right? Yeah. Two, they need to give them more time. Stop the freaking banter back and forth, which is just basically for entertainment value and purpose, because at the end of the day, it's kind of like a fight. Okay, look at a UFC fight, for example. they go and like two people could, for a lot of the time, I feel like two people go into a fight and they're talking smack about each other. They're trash talking each other, and they're kind of, getting heated a little bit. But then at the end of the fight, they sit there and they hug, kiss, and say how great the other person was, and they hung in there. It was a tough fight, and
You'd
this
love to
person's
see
great
that
and
more.
all this other stuff. But that's
It's not like that with the debates, though.
that's what, well, the debates. I don't know if they hug, kiss, and make up at the end of the debate or whatever. But they're basically doing that, and then just civil with each other at the end of the day.
I don't know how civil they are, because they have to run against them, and you have a mass population behind them.
It's
and
just
when
so,
it comes down to it, our government is bipartisan, so this way or that way, and you have to be on that side. So usually there's not much.
Well, okay, so let's say there's not. Either way, they should get rid of the banter, the back and forth, and the banter and the trashing of each candidate or whatever, just to try and make up entertainment value, and two, time, because they're trying to maybe veer off of what the question was that was just asked, okay, or the topic that's being discussed. Because that.
So you want to get rid of a time limit?
No, I'm saying there needs to be more time for each candidate to talk. Just that candidate to talk and answer the question. Answer the question with actual educational information, so the American people can understand what it is of the policy that they're gonna.
But that's the point that I was trying to make.
They're trying to make people stupid.
They're trying to get it as limited as possible, so that nothing is really said.
So what good does that do? Is my point.
It doesn't do any good.
So why do we even have these?
Exactly. And when you texted me in the group chat earlier this week or whatever, what can we do to make it better? I said, stop doing the debates. I don't really think that they fucking mean all that much.
So then you're eliminating any kind of understanding or education that the American people would get, or at least some of which, because if they're not going to do their homework, and not a lot of people are only going to watch that, then how are they going to make an educated decision on who to vote for?
Exactly. I think the whole thing needs to be changed down to its core. What we have now is just smearing and fucking diverting questions.
If I was in politics, I would not put down the opponent of which I was running against.
Well,
personally, I would not, because that shows, in my opinion, that shows a character of somebody who is willing to bash somebody to put themselves ahead or in a better position.
Well,
and I don't live my life personally, and like, I don't bash any of the agents out of my industry that I've worked with, even if I couldn't stand them. I will educate my buyer and say, hey, these are some of the things that this person might be known for, and I've had experience with this other agent that maybe wasn't as positive as I've had with other agents. Right. But I don't personally go at them and say, this agent's terrible, I hate it, or blah, 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 blah. I educate my people, and I try and make sure that I am working with every other agent in my industry, because that's how we do business together.
Right. But that's a smaller scale.
I get that.
But where you work is not divided into two separate entities that are against each other.
Well, I get that. But the point
thing
is
about
the
it is
same,
whether
though.
you want to admit it or not, it's kind of gossip on a large scale. It works. Fucking, if you put someone else down, those people are going to hate them even more and prop you up even more. That's why they do it.
But that's not right, in my opinion. That's not the way.
And it's not right. I don't necessarily think it's right.
That's not the way people should be.
I think the debates could be something that's cool enough to be on par with like the Super Bowl, and people should watch it like that. But just the way it's gone about,
if it was more
not
educational and there was less banter and bicker back and forth, and it was actually something people could be informed. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
However that needed to change and make that happen, I would be okay with.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention was like Vivek Ramaswamy, whatever is, however you say his name, whatever. He's a local guy, St. X, went to St. Xavier for high school and graduated from St. X, so he's a local Cincinnati guy, whatever. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of things about him on, here, and then you read other things about him that are this or whatever. He's very well spoken. He's a very highly intelligent individual, and he's got a lot of, people are saying, oh, well, he's just trying to appeal to Trump's population so he can take those voters and stuff like that. And then some other people say that, he's real and that they feel like he would be a good, maybe cabinet member possible. vice president candidate if Trump wins the nomination and whatnot.
And then you see, was saying in the chat.
And then you see other people that are saying, be careful of the person that has that way of speaking, and then they go and like show a video of Obama because in the debates and when he was
a great speaker.
Campaigning, he was a great speaker as well. So it's like you see all of these different things. So it's like, how do you know if a candidate is real in what they say? Until they get to the actual job of which they're going after.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this: I think a lot could change with the debates if the person who's asking the questions was changed. Because
the moderators,
the moderators. If the people, they obviously have hit key points or whatever, but they don't necessarily push them on something.
They don't drill them.
I've heard a lot of people say, like back in the 2020 elections, they were like, "I think we should have Joe Rogan moderated." I think that would be actually a good person to do it because Joe Rogan is not afraid to push you on an issue. If it doesn't get asked, it's like, hey, give him another 30 minutes, or another 30 seconds, minute, whatever it is, and actually do it. Because I've seen on his podcast all the time, well, you didn't actually say what I asked the question
and
to.
He's more neutral and not leaning one way or another.
He leans left.
Well,
he does lean left. But
I mean, I'm not saying. I should let me rephrase that. He would in a stage like that. He wouldn't lean one way or another.
On his own podcast, he does a pretty good job of being neutral, but he does lean left. His
but
actual politics, he leans left.
Well, which is fine. But like, if he were in that position where he was the moderator, I think he'd do a good job of just staying.
And now, one thing that we could change by that: have the people vote on who moderates it.
Yeah, but like, how are you gonna, like, who's gonna be the one that puts that together? Like,
well, we already put together these debates and elections and primaries.
I mean, you're not going to have an election of who the moderator is going to be for a debate, but because that's too much.
We've got a computer, we can get on and fucking do that. But then at the same time, they can, skew that.
They can skew that. Right. Yeah. I think they just need to really, truly make the right decision on a moderator like that.
They're not going to make the right decision. They're going to make the decision that benefits them.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would be good. But at any rate, I mean, I just, like, you look at so many things about a candidate. Like, I personally, if I don't know who would run or whatever for the Democratic nominee would be if they don't choose Biden or whatever. But like if they choose,
well, he's locked in, isn't he? Because he's the current president of the United States.
They can not make that
unless they impeach him.
There's something I believe that because they're like I've seen and like read stuff where they're like, is he going to be the nominee for presidential candidate in 2024?
I guess that's a good point.
And talking about like Gavin Newsom.
Doesn't RFK, isn't he running for the Democratic Party?
I don't know the answer to that question, but
that's weird because I thought the current president, as long as their term, they could get another 4 years, their second term or whatever. I thought that they automatically had.
I don't necessarily think that is the case.
I thought that
from what I've because they're talking about Gavin Newsom being a presidential candidate for 2024 on the Democratic side. I did see that, but at any rate, if Trump does win the nomination, I think Carrie Lake. In Arizona would be the best choice for him for vice president. And I think maybe someone like a Vivek would be good in like a cabinet position and oversee certain things.
A lot of people talk about DeSantis too, but I think that
DeSantis in
Florida, I think he's a little bit too radical for some people.
That would not work at all. And I don't know of Vivek being more like a rookie politician, technically, obviously, but not understanding of some of the stuff that needs to be, held accountable for a vice presidential
younger guy
for a vice presidential position. I think he'd be good in a cabinet to kind of like train that, and like someone like Carrie Lake, who's already been in politics and out from Arizona, I think would be a good vice president.
I will say this about that point, though. You think that Trump would win. I think that the 2020 election proved that the system does not want Trump back in power, and I don't think he's going to win the primaries for that reason. I think that when it comes down to it, the popular vote, he is definitely the top guy. Definitely, but I don't think the system will allow it.
So then Republicans would basically be laying down to the Democrats to win the presidential election. Then
I don't know if it's necessarily just the Democrats at this point. I think that everyone kind of doesn't want Trump.
There's people on the right side of the aisle that don't, but they're a part of the swamp that's trying to be drained.
The point that I'm trying to make is just witnessing the 2020 election, and I believe wholeheartedly that was completely rigged. I think that he is by far the most popular candidate, but because that didn't go in his favor, that the system does not want him in it.
Well, the system doesn't. Correct.
They won't.
Yeah. No, I hear
and like I said
that.
at the beginning, I don't think votes actually matter at a federal level.
And that's the point of all of this, and we can even end this discussion here, is like, then what's the point of even having any of the debates or any of the crap that's
it's like all a show to make people feel like they matter.
That's what I'm saying. So then just pick out who you want and let the American people vote, and whoever you think's the closest, and you guys want. It's just stupid.
Mm-hmm. It's dumb.
It's dumb. So like we may never see an election, a real election, ever again in our lifetime, like an actual, true, legitimate election. I'm not saying
I don't think we've seen
one
that in
way
a
or
while.
another in years in elections. You know, I'm not saying one way or another. I'm just saying, like,
after every election, dude, there's shit comes out about voting fraud and shit like that. So
like
it's just a matter of who cheats better.
It's wild.
It's wild, but it's the way it works.
And this is where we've come to in America.
Yes, it is.
We're no better than anyone else.
But I digress.